I'd like to introduce Lorraine from England, who takes LDN for multiple sclerosis. Good morning, Lorraine.
Good morning.
Could you tell me when you were diagnosed with MS?
Let me think. When my son was 3, so that was in, crikey, I should have rehearsed this really, shouldn't I? It was when I was 36 and I'm now 58.
Right, okay. So what symptoms were you experiencing at that time which led to diagnosis?
I noticed that I walked rather strangely. One of my legs started to behave rather awkwardly and kind of flapped along rather slowly, and I thought it was a bit strange, and I got some strange sensations in one of my legs.
Mm-hmm. And were there any other symptoms at that time?
Not really, no. I think, I thought I'd got piles, actually. Yeah, there was sort of a strange sensation at the base of my spine, and it went very numb, and I actually thought I got piles, and of course that's quite embarrassing, so you tend to put these things off. So I put it off for a while, and then went along to the doctor and kind of mentioned these two things casually together, and also that I noticed I did start going for a wee rather a lot. Yeah. And so I kind of mentioned it in passing along with something else. So I waited till I went and saw something else and then mentioned it. Mm-hmm. And then was told rather quickly, I'm going to send you for tests. And I asked for what, and the doctor said, I'd rather not say until I've done the tests. And I said, well, if you're sending me for tests, I'd rather know what they're for, as I don't panic, and I'd rather know what they're for. So they said, all right, for MS, at which point I panicked quietly. But I did end up going for an MRI scan rather quickly. And I suppose really the way to look at that is you're quite lucky, because you do get the MRI scan, but it really was quite scary to have one that quickly and know it must be fairly serious because you're slotted in so quickly. Mm. And it really moved from there, because I ended up having an MRI scan. I was then booked in for a lumbar puncture, and I queued for that the next day for 5 hours, sitting outside this curtain while they all went in, and then they came out and said, sorry, we've run out of time, can you come back tomorrow? But by the time I'd heard everybody going in and coming out crying and things, I said, no, I don't think I'm coming back, actually. So I said, do you need, and when I went back for the results 2 days later for the MRI scan, and they said, yes, you have got MS, and I said, do you need the lumbar puncture to get the results? They said, no, not really, it would tell us some more results, but the results stay the same. I said, in that case, I'm not having the lumbar puncture. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have that. And I was just told it was not good. I have to say, I went to the MS ward, and I sat in this ward looking at all these people in various stages of MS, and I sat outside this office watching all these people for about 45 minutes, and nobody spoke to us particularly. And then I probably burst into tears at that point, actually, was with my husband. And I was called into this office, and they said, what are you crying for? And I said, because you're telling me whether I've got MS or not, and I'm looking at all these people who can't eat or breathe or walk, and I'm here to find out whether I've got this. Anyway, then they said, just go over there, and I went behind this curtain, and they did the usual, follow my finger, pull this hand, and stand up and do this, sit down, and then they didn't say anything, really. And in the end, I had to say, well, have I got MS or not? And they said, oh, yes, you've got it. And that was how I was told. And they said, well, contact your doctor, make an appointment to go and see him. And I came out of the hospital absolutely stunned to see my car being towed away as well. It was just being put onto a lorry, and the one in front was being put on, and they were just getting ready to put mine on, and we said, please, can you not put it on? So they just handed me a £35 parking ticket because we parked on the wrong side of the road. We didn't realise at 4 o'clock it became a non-parking zone. And I remember coming out of there absolutely stunned, driving back, just thinking, I can't believe this. And my husband just said to me, I wish I could have it for you. And I went to the doctor's a week later, and he said, I'm really sorry about the news. Here's some information. Give the MS people a ring, and they'll send you some brochures. And that was it, really.
pretty much on your own, aren't you?
Absolutely.
So how did your MS progress in the time between being diagnosed and finding LDN?
I think in the first 10 years it wasn't too bad. I think for the first 10 years I can honestly say it was manageable. It progressed very, very slowly. I just found for the first 5 years nothing really happened. But then small things happened. I found I got really tired, and I found that after that first attack that I'd had, I was in a lot of pain. I had an attack and I was in a lot of pain with my back. It was excruciating. They said come in for steroids, and I didn't know what steroids were. I thought I was going to take some steroids, get incredibly fat, and I said, oh no, I don't want to do that. So I put it off for about 3 or 4 days until I couldn't stand the pain, rang them up, and then they said, oh well really, you should be coming out of it by now. So perhaps leave it a couple of days, see how you feel, and by which time it was kind of going off. So I left it, thinking, or at least I didn't have to take steroids, thinking that was a bad thing, because nobody had actually explained that the steroids was actually a good thing. So that was my first attack, and then for about 5, 6 years, nothing really happened. After about 10 years, I then had my first relapse, my second relapse really, and each one had left me with some sort of disability, like I couldn't feel my foot or I couldn't feel up to my ankle. It seemed like you got a numbness that went up your leg to the top of your leg, and then it went right up to the top of your arm and seemed to run out of your fingers. It went down your arm then, and eventually the feeling ran out of the tips of your fingers, and the numbness wore off. And I think really the way I dealt with it, I was very fierce, very independent with it. I mean, when I was first diagnosed, I came home and decided to decorate the hall stairs and landing. And my husband came home to find me up a ladder painting the hall stairs and landing, because I just thought, well, it's not going to get me. And that was my attitude, and basically always has been. So I always have, and still continue to do so, probably much to my detriment actually, have just battled on and thought, well, it's not getting me, and I'm just going to carry on exactly as I am. And it's taken me only to the last probably 4 or 5 years to actually accept that, to a degree, I'm going to have to cave in to a certain degree and go with this, because it does have a detrimental effect on your life to a degree, and you do have to accept it into your life and work around it to a degree. Not for the first few years. I've had it now for 19 years, and I've only just started making a few allowances in possibly the last 3 years. And I bought a wheelchair before I had to use one some 2 years ago, and I now use it for long distances, because if people are going for a walk around a big park, if we're going away for a weekend, it's either that or you watch them all go and sit and read a book till they come back. But in these cases, I'd like to go too. I use a 3-wheeler trolley that I push around. So, and it makes you look like a 90-year-old, but if it keeps me upright, I'll use it, because I'd rather use that and be able to mooch around in and out 1 or 2 local shops, and be able to get out my car and go into a cafe and walk in there and be able to sit at a table with a friend and have a coffee rather than not go in. So I will use that, and if we go out for a drink in the evening or go into a restaurant, it's easier to use that than go in a chair, so I use that. And I go to work using that, so I can walk the full length of the corridor, go up in the lift and get to my desk using that. So I use that. So I do have some adaptations, and I actually use that in the house to get from room to room, and then I can chuck things in the bag to carry it from room to room as well. You do adapt.
If you were to score your quality of life on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, before you started LDN, what would it have been?
Oh, LDN. When I discovered LDN, about 2 years ago, about probably 2.5 years ago, I had begged for 17 years to have, not LDN, what's the interferon. Ever since I heard about interferon, I wanted interferon. Please give me interferon. I've heard it's miracle. It's going to slow the MS down and, stop me having relapses. And I really wanted it. And I begged for this interferon because I heard it was going to be an absolute lifesaver. And for some reason, I never quite fitted the criteria, and they never quite gave it me. And then I started having relapses, and I just never had enough relapses or in the time allotted. And eventually they gave it me 2 years ago, but to me it seemed like they gave me interferon after they shut the stable door. It was too late. I'd already had relapses. And I tried it for 6 months, and I really persevered with it. I gave myself all the injections, and eventually I could give myself an injection without the gun, and I did everything that I was supposed to do. And for 6 months I persevered, and within 6 months I was so ill. My husband and my mum noticed it more than anybody. They said, you went downhill so much. I would come in from work and just flop onto the settee and fall straight asleep. I was so desperately ill. I got so ill with all the relapses, and I was just so ill in general. I had no energy, and even as independent and as fierce as I am, I couldn't battle this anymore. And then I heard about the LDN, and I went up to a conference in Glasgow, and we went to and listened to everything, and Dr. Gilhooly was there, and yourself was there, actually. And we were really impressed about everything we heard, and I went for an appointment with Dr. Gilhooly at the clinic and got my first prescription for this. Unfortunately, at the time I had got it, I was actually having a major relapse, so I couldn't actually take it for another 2 months because I ended up in hospital the weekend I'd gone up to take it. But when I did manage to take it, I started and I was trying to work out sort of the amount to take, which took a bit of working out. But I have to say, LDN absolutely gave me my life back. It was absolutely brilliant. There was a girl that I met at the conference, and she had gone from not being able to hardly walk at all, and the LDN worked for her wonderfully because she said it actually put her back on her feet. And it hasn't done that for me. But what it has done is it's given me back so much energy that it's made me feel like a normal person again from that point of view. It hasn't enabled me to walk again, but I think it does different things for different people. And I've told absolutely everybody about this because I was so tired that I would come in from work. I work 3 days a week still, and I would come in from work before I took the LDN, and it was all I could do to get my key in the door, walk through the door and make it to the settee and just fall on the settee, and I'd be asleep when everybody else came in at 5 o'clock. I would get in about 4, and by the time everybody else came in, I would be fast asleep, and I couldn't get any dinner ready. I couldn't do anything. I was just tired. I'd just go to bed without eating. I was so tired. But once
I've been there.
Yeah, and once I took the LDN, after about 3-4 weeks, and I got sorted out with the dosage, it was absolutely brilliant. And I just feel like a normal person. I stay up normal hours. I mean, I go to bed perhaps a little bit earlier than I used to do because I used to stay up really quite late. But I do feel just generally wonderful. I wake up in the morning and I don't feel like, I've just dragged myself from the depths. You are a little more tired than everybody else, but on a general basis, it's absolutely fabulous. Fabulous. I can't praise it enough.
I don't think there was anything else I could ask there. I think you've just about said it all.
It's just brilliant. I mean, to say it's just a little piece of liquid, I've told everybody. I've actually just recommended a friend of mine up in Lancashire to do it, and she tried it the first time, and she found a dosage and everything. She said, it doesn't work. And I said, then stop it totally, come off it for a month, and then start again, because it didn't. The first time I did it, you have to just work out the dosage and until you are so tired, and then you suddenly think, this must be it, and then drop it, that half a mil, and just that will be it. You will find it out. It does take some working out, but it is definitely worth it. Stick with it and do it, because it does give you your life back. And my husband and my mum just said it was like watching a butterfly come back to life. Do you know what I mean?
Oh.
And they just said it was. I mean, it's not going to be the be all and end all cure. I don't think they found that yet, but this goes an awful long way to it. I can't praise it enough. And we were so appalled that the doctors wouldn't do it. My doctor said she would support me in it and help me with it. And, you know, we rang you and we asked, how do we get prescriptions? And I went through that Medicare, whatever it was, on the internet. But I now get it through the clinic at Glasgow, and I asked them if they could save me going onto the internet to write out my prescription every time, as I've been on it for 2 years now, because I'm absolutely rubbish on the internet. So I just get my prescription from them, and they automatically take all the payments every 3 months and everything to save me keep doing it now, which is wonderful. And they are so, Dixon's Chemist Pharmacy are so efficient as well. They send it out automatically, and they're just brilliant.
Thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
Okay, that's very pleased to, and I would recommend anybody to go for it. And I hope the doctors get on board with